Before every name became history, there was silence, a moment of doubt, a single choice. The world only remembers the victory, but greatness begins in the shadows. Welcome to Mendora, where every legend was once ordinary.
No one told him the silence would come for him, that the one thing he lived for, sound, would become the thing he'd lose forever. But this isn't just a story about loss. It's a story about power, about what happens when the world takes everything from you, and you decide to create anyway. Because the truth is, greatness isn't born in comfort. It's born in pain. And Ludwig van Beethoven proved that even in silence, a human soul can still roar. Vienna, 1792. A small, dimly lit apartment filled with candlelight and music. A young Beethoven, barely in his 20s, sits at his piano. Eyes closed, hands trembling with brilliance. He isn't just playing notes. He's painting emotion, turning chaos into beauty. Every chord is his heartbeat, every melody a confession. People in the salons whisper, "This man will be the next Mozart." And for a while, he is. Concert halls fill. Nobles bow to him. He's untouchable. He's finally heard. But life has a strange way of humbling even the brightest stars. It started softly. The sound of the violin became faint. The crowd's applause after a concert, barely audible. At first, he blamed fatigue, then illness. But deep down, he knew something was wrong. By the time he turned 30, Beethoven, the greatest musical mind of his generation, was going deaf. He hid it for years, avoided people, laughed when he couldn't hear their jokes, played harder to pretend he still could. But the truth haunted him. He once wrote, "I can no longer hear the high notes of the flute or the singing of birds. I am living a miserable life. I must live like an exile." He stopped performing, stopped socializing. The man whose soul spoke through music now lived in silence. He even wrote a farewell letter, known as the Heiligenstadt Testament, a suicide note never sent. He was ready to give up, but something stopped him. He looked at that letter again, and instead of signing it with his death, he signed it with defiance. He wrote, "I will seize fate by the throat. It shall not wholly overcome me." In that moment, Beethoven was reborn. He realized he couldn't control his hearing, but he could control his will. If he could no longer hear music, then he would feel it. He started to write differently. Not for the audience, not for money, but for eternity. He placed his ear against the piano to feel the vibration. He memorized the sound of every note he'd ever heard. He composed through pure memory, imagination, and emotion. He no longer wrote music for others to enjoy. He wrote music to survive, and what came next changed history. Between the ages of 32 and 45, while almost completely deaf, Beethoven composed his greatest works. Symphonies number 3 through 9, each one more powerful than the last. Each one a conversation between man and destiny. The Eroica Symphony, born from a rebellion. The Fifth Symphony, that iconic da-da-da-doom, a cry of fate knocking on the door of the human spirit. And finally, the Ninth Symphony, Ode to Joy, written in total silence. When it premiered, the audience erupted into thunderous applause. Beethoven couldn't hear it. One of the singers had to turn him around so he could see their joy. He stood there, tears in his eyes, watching a sea of people cheering for a symphony he could never hear himself. And that's when you realize it's not about what's taken from you. It's about what you do with what remains. Most people stop when they lose something, their dream, their confidence, their voice. But Beethoven didn't. He turned his silence into sound, his pain into art, his weakness into a legacy that still echoes centuries later. We all have our own silence, moments where life feels unfair, when the things we relied on vanish. Maybe you've lost a dream. Maybe you've been told you're not good enough. Maybe the world has gone quiet for you too. But here's the truth. You are not finished. You are being forged. The silence isn't punishment. It's preparation. Because only in silence do you discover the sound of your true strength. Beethoven's story isn't just about music. It's about transformation. He didn't fight to hear again. He fought to matter again. So when life turns down the volume on your dreams, don't give up. Listen deeper. Because maybe the world took your hearing so you could finally hear your heart. Your setbacks aren't your ending. They're your composition. And like Beethoven, you get to choose what your final symphony will sound like. The greatest masterpieces are written in silence, but only by those who refuse to stop playing.
Every story you've heard here, well, it wasn't just about them. It was about you. Because every victory, every failure, every sacrifice is a reflection of what's possible inside all of us. This is Mendora, where history reminds you who you can become. Like, share, subscribe, and step into the next legend.